There are a few very important rules in life. Never put your tongue on the freezer. Don't flush anything down a marine toilet. And never, ever fall in love with a boat. Solway Lass is a love boat in every sense of the word. She's hosted first dates, honeymoons, weddings, romantic evenings. She's been a place where people meet, and Solway Lass herself has stolen many people's hearts. But there is a sacrifice to falling in love with a boat like Solway. She requires a lot of tender loving care, and every now and then she needs someone to come along and save her. It amazes me how much effort people have gone to over the years to save this boat over and over again. Drew and Joanne met in the Whitsundays, fell in love, and then got married on Solway Lass in 1991.
I arrived in a white Mercedes.
Yep.
And I remember that you came up to get me out of the car, and Dad was like, no, she's not yours yet. So then we got on board.
I forgot myself. I forgot the tradition of the father delivering the bride.
Yeah, we were married on Sunset, amidships, with a celebrant, of course. And then we had 32 guests. And we had full service, full dining down below. So
as we cruised about the harbour, enjoying the view, and 34 years of marriage coming up. But we've got two wonderful children. We've got a daughter and a son.
Yep.
Our daughter's
29,
and our son's 25. And so
we brought them out here on Solway Lass when Alice was 18. So we did the 3-day, 3-night cruise on board Solway to reminisce around the Whitsundays.
And sailing.
Sailing's our life.
Lots of sailing and diving, and enjoying the scenery.
Oh, she's a beautiful boat, and I'm glad she's still sailing.
Yeah, it makes us happy to see she's still going.
Lifetime experience.
Great to see her out there on the water with full sail up. It's just magic.
Yeah.
Solway Lass is 68 years old. She is now a converted icebreaker, and God knows what else. Now called the Katie, she must have been doing some very serious sailing. I found a picture that locates her in the Ascension Islands in 1970. That's a very long way from Europe. Her mast is shorter, her bowsprit's shorter, and she's got a big chunky wheelhouse. But she's still Solway Lass, and in these pictures I can see that she's still rigged with sails. The next location I have for Solway Lass is a record of her passing through the Suez Canal on February 28, 1972, with a crew of 5 and 2 Danish dogs on board. She is now owned by HB Schutz and Mrs. J. She's now a British boat flying a British flag. She eventually ends up in Fiji and is sold to the Dateline Shipping Company. The company purchased her because of her incredibly strong hull and her shallow draft. At the time, Fiji had a lot of uncharted reefs for major collision hazards, and Solway Lass was a vessel capable of surviving such impacts. At some point in the 70s, she's renamed the Luenda, and then she's renamed again the Tui Nasavusavu. David Collins came across Solway Lass in 1974 in Fiji, and he wrote a description of his encounter. He said the boat was operating under the name of Loendua. She had an English master and a Fijian crew. David then sailed on the Solway in 1976. He said the Solway was carrying a cargo of concrete blocks and cement, but they weren't heavy enough to stop the Solway from rolling heavily when it encountered large waves. One of the rigging screws broke away and then went over the side, causing a commotion on the deck, and they anchored by the tiny little village of Vunisi. The crew went ashore to hire local men from the village to unload the cargo into a fleet of canoe-like small craft. It took 3 days to unload the cargo hold, and then they set sail for Suva. David described Solway Lass as the Cinderella of the waterfront in Fiji, a boat that went unnoticed by the throngs of tourists, but she was a really hard-working vessel whose master and crew struggled to compete for the cargoes in a difficult market. Captain Anderson must not have been very happy at the time. The ship's log is just full of incidents of things breaking, the ship taking on water, and lots of things going wrong. Solway Lass has made it to the year 1983. She is now 81 years old. She is working under the name of Tui Nasafusavu in the Fiji Islands as a coastal trader and haunted by Captain Anderson. Unfortunately, Solway was not looked after very well. She was allowed to run down and then she sunk, ending up as a derelict wreck off a remote beach. But fortunately for Solway Lass, Tim Lloyd is looking for a new boat. He'd heard about Solway Lass and he'd fallen in love with her. So Tim decided to rescue Solway Lass and fully restore her to her former glory. So Tim got himself a tugboat, he headed out to Fiji, he hired a Fijian crew, and then he set about salvaging the wreck of Solway Lass.
Tim Lloyd bought the vessel from Fiji. We found her over there as a rusty wreck, and he paid $25,000 for it.
Tim successfully raised Solway Lass, and then, with his tugboat and his Fijian crew, he attempted to tow it back to Australia.
On the voyage out by the crew of Fijians, they found the water tanks had started to rupture, spilling all the fresh water into the bilges. They were simply living on coconuts by the time they had arrived, and fruit that was kept on board, and the Sydney Customs then reported the worst case of rat infestation they'd ever seen on a vessel.
So the boat of Tim's dreams was too disgusting to get through Australian customs. Apparently there were rats the size of cats running around on the deck. The official story goes that to get the boat through customs, Tim took it away, covered it up, and completely fumigated it. However, there are persistent rumours that Tim actually took the boat away and sunk it, left it submerged for 2 weeks, and then raised it again. So whatever Tim did, it worked. He managed to get Solway Lass through customs. He then began the process of completely restoring Solway Lass to her former glory. Tim even tracked down a lot of Solway Lass's old parts, which were scattered all around the world. For example, he found the steering mechanism in a museum near the shipyard where she was built.
She was taken to Berries Bay at Woodley's Marina, where she was hauled out of the water and a major refit commenced that took over 2 years.
They pretty much made it so it was just a half of a hulk, and that was about it. They put new decks on it, they put new cabin tops in it, they re-rigged it, they completely rebuilt the boat. They put that rig on it, which is quite a nice rig.
It nearly ruined Tim, the owner, financially. It got close to $1 million, which in the 80s was a lot of money. So they added at least 2 bulkheads to reduce the size of the cargo hold. The decks were created and laid with pitched Oregon, which is 60 mils thick. There's a lot of cedar panelling used down below. That was the dining room that was created, that big area, which seated 60 people. The engine was completely driven into the ground. The Caterpillar engine was removed. It was rebuilt by Caterpillar apprentices at TAFE, and the parts were kindly donated by the Caterpillar, the company Caterpillar, and the engine was completely rebuilt. The anchor winch is original, although it was converted to hydraulics. The air vents are original. The steering gear is original. The ladder going down into the engine room is original.
Solway Lass was fully rebuilt, complete with a beautiful square rig. She was renamed Solway Lass, the name that she holds today. Tim put Solway Lass into service in Sydney Harbour, Sydney, and she quickly became an icon of the region. He used her as a floating restaurant, and she was a major tourist draw. Solway Lass was back.
She was used for school groups, weddings, private charters, 2-hour sails during the day and 3-hour dinner cruises.
From 1984 to 1988 we used to work on this boat in Sydney Harbour and take people out for lunches. It was only sort of 14 to 18. It was quite a long time ago. We're talking 40 years ago when I used to do it. Of course, back in those days we did it for nothing. We did it just for the love of it. Downstairs used to be the restaurant. If it was a nice day, they would set table and chairs up upstairs for the guests to sit on. The food was excellent in those days. It was all seafood and all that sort of stuff they used to serve on here. And I think it was roast lambs and roast beef and that sort of thing. I think in those days the kitchen used to be downstairs up the front. I remember at the end of some days we'd have to even get the old stones out and stone the deck and clean it all up, and we'd hose it all down and check all the ropes and make sure everything was lubed up. And I love the Solway Lass. I'm glad it's still named the same actually, because I had heard that over the years it was changing name.
In 1988, Australia celebrated its Bicentenary, and as part of that celebration, there was a toolship First Fleet reenactment. Solway Lass got her time in the sun, with her squares flying and surrounded by other toolships. The sailors at the time said that this reenactment was the highlight of their lives, with a fleet of toolships cruising up the coast, being greeted as heroes everywhere they went.
It was the trip of a lifetime doing that, just to be able to be part of it all, and to be able to get out in this beautiful old boat and sail in the Sydney Harbour. It was a very enjoyable moment, something you'll never get to do again. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Just the crew on that particular day, so we had the whole boat to ourselves.
How'd you find being up in the rig?
Oh, very scary. But I was only a young fella then, so I probably had bigger testicles. But no, I used to love it. It was hard holding on up there. I know going out through the Sydney Heads that particular day, the captain sent us all up the top and out the yard arms, and we're all up there hanging on, and it was one of the scariest times of my life. I was only just hanging on, I tell you. Yeah.
I came along in 1989 after the Bicentenary, and by that time she had completed a voyage to Tasmania, joining up with the First Fleet reenactment, and it was her first offshore voyage as a topsail schooner. I believe they had a bit of trouble there and they snapped the main topmast. She was a little bit over-rigged.
Solway Lass had a few incidents in Sydney Harbour, including one day when her main gaff sail locked out, causing her to nearly ram the Sydney Opera House.
The mainsail was a little bit too big. We used to sail down the harbour with a strong southerly blowing, the mainsail fully sheeted out, the wheel hard over, and we were still rounding up into the Opera House, half out of control. So the mainsail was cut down.
She also had an incident where a silver spoon was dropped into the bilge. It lay there forgotten, reacted with the German blued steel, and ate its way through, causing Solway Lass to partially sink. Also, there are rumours, and I have no idea whether these are true or not, but there are rumours that Solway Lass spent some time working as a floating adult entertainment facility. And now we reach 1999, when I first encountered Solway Lass. She is purchased by Jim, who intended to sail her to the Whitsunday Islands and turn her into a charter vessel. How did you come across Solway Lass?
It was working as a dinner boat in Sydney Harbour. As soon as I saw it, I knew I had to have it.
Okay, one of the things that really attracted me to the boat originally was it has an original rig. This rig was built actually in Sydney to the same specifications as it had decades and decades ago. And it's got big yards, and people climb up, pull them up, and set them just like they've done for hundreds of years.
We bought it, and then you and I and a few friends sailed it from Sydney all the way up here.
That was an interesting trip.
It was a great trip, yeah.